Hi, it's Matt from One Week Bath with our continued series of short videos on bathroom design, product selection, and remodeling. Today we're going to talk about faucets.
It's another edition of Soak It Up with Matt Plaskoff, bathroom design and remodeling.
There are basically two things you really want to consider with faucets. One is going to be the color of it, obviously. What is the color of the material? And the second thing is the functionality of that faucet. And there are a lot of things to think about when it comes to functionality. Starting with, do we want a single lever system or do we want a separate hot, separate cold? Some people prefer the control of a separate hot, separate cold. Some people prefer the simplicity of a single handle. You also want to think about when you're looking at the countertop, is it a long countertop and you're going to have this small lonely faucet there, and is it nicer to have more handles and more hardware on the countertop? That's kind of a stylistic decision. So that's one of the first decisions you have to make is, do you want separate hot, separate cold, or a single type handle? The second thing you want to think about is the spout height. Do you want a high spout, a low spout, and also the throw of the spout? How far does the water come out into the sink? Most popular colors these days, and mind you, the more popular colors come in more styles, of course, because people are buying them, and so the manufacturers will stick with those popular colors. Polished chrome, you can pretty much find anything you like in polished chrome. The other nice thing about polished chrome is that polished chrome is polished chrome. So if you want to mix manufacturers, or you have a faucet that you like but it doesn't have a nice shower set or things like that, then you have some flexibility to mix those things. Polished chrome is typically going to match with just about anything. If you're not keen on the shininess of a polished chrome, they used to make some brushed chrome. They do not make much of it anymore. There are only a few faucets that I know of out there with brushed chrome. You've got to kind of move to a nickel finish. Now the nickel, brushed nickel, again, very popular, has kind of a little bit of a brown undertone because it is nickel. And so you have to be aware of that. If you're doing a gray and white or black bathroom or something like that, you also have polished nickel. So if you prefer those brown undertones, but you don't like the brushed look, then you have polished nickel. And then finally, oil rub bronze, which is your dark, kind of more old worldish finish. And so those are kind of the most popular. The gold finishes are now coming back. Brushed gold and those type of things are now coming back, but there are still a lot of limitations in terms of the styles that they're being offered in. And as they become more and more popular, more styles will be made. You can find black, you can find white, you can find all kinds of finishes, but typically polished chrome, brushed nickel, oil rub bronze, polished nickel are going to be your top finishes. So let's talk a little bit more about function. So at the beginning, I mentioned two handle versus one handle, that type of a thing. So why would you want one over another? One is the control. I personally like separate hot, separate cold because I like the control of being able to turn a hot and have it be hot. Some people prefer the single lever because they feel like it's easier to mix the water, and I totally get that. Stylistically, the two-handle faucets look different oftentimes than the one-handle faucets. I'll show someone a two-handle faucet that looks kind of traditional, somewhat traditional and actually transitional, and then I'll show them a single lever and it looks much more modern. So, style does play into this. You also want to consider if you have a vessel, if you're dealing with a vessel, which would be a sink above the counter, and understand that those faucets, if they're mounted on the counter and they're trying to get over the top of a vessel, they have to be pretty tall faucets. And so that does limit your selection a little bit when you have those vessel sinks, depending on the height of the vessel. And you want to check the specifications and make sure the spout's going to clear, make sure it's not too high so it doesn't splash everywhere, which is the spout height thing that we're going to talk about in a second. And so vessel faucets are something to be considered. The other part of vessel faucets is oftentimes we'll have a vessel, but the faucet will be mounted to the vessel. So you've seen kind of these above counter rectangular sinks, and they're actually mounted to the sink. In that case, you have a lot more flexibility because you're not trying to beat the sink. You're actually on top of the sink. The last one, and I'll just kind of mention it briefly, is the 4-inch spread faucet. If you're short on countertop space, they're typically a little less expensive. They do come in a fair bit of styles. The 4-inch spread rather than the separate 8-inch spread faucet on the countertop is an option if you're a little tight on space. So going back to the spout height and throw, this is important. Some like to get underneath the spout with cup, bucket, head, whatever they're trying to get under there, and they don't want a low spout. So you want to think about the functionality of that. In terms of the height, you also have to make sure that, again, the spout is throwing the water in the right spot in the sink, so it's not hitting the side of the sink and splashing, and it's landing as close to the center of the sink as possible. And you can check the specifications of the look. They'll give you measurements from the center of the spout to the center of the sink. The last type of sink faucet that we'll talk about is the wall mount faucet. There are some pros and cons to these faucets. They're great for vessels or small countertops. So if you can imagine that the faucet is coming out of the wall, it's not taking up any space on the countertop. If the sink is big and is filling the countertop and there's no room for a faucet and you don't want to put it off to the side or something, this is a really good solution. Also, they're adjustable in terms of how high you put them off the counter, so you can kind of put them where you want them. The problem with these wall mount, not problem, but the concern with these wall mount faucets is that the valve is actually in the wall. It's actually built in the wall. So if you're putting a backsplash of marble or something, and this spout's coming out of it, and you have a problem with the valve itself that's in the wall and you can't access it from the other side, you're tearing out your splash. So you want to be really careful and only use these if you're dying for the style or have a huge functionality issue. They also are very expensive. They're also typically more expensive than a typical deck mount faucet. They have a very separate valve that goes in the wall, and typically stylistically they're on the pricier end of the spectrum. So that's it for faucets. Go to our website for more of the Soak It Up videos, or you can go on YouTube. We've got them posted there, and happy remodeling.